Welcome back to Artists in Nature and Nature Journaling with Kayla. It's week 4 and this activity is called Tree Exploration. To recap this week though, Nate in Nature in Your Neighborhood talked about using tree bark and its texture to help him identify trees and what kind they might be. And then in the Search for Sand Squatch, Anthony talked about scat or animal droppings and what might be in them to help us determine what animal the scat came from. So sometimes scat can have seeds or nuts, and those help us to learn about the trees or the plant sources that animals like over others. So gear up with your journal, a pencil, a crayon, and then some colored pencils or markers or anything that you can use to color, because we're going to be adding some color to our drawings too. Alright, so I put on sunglasses because it is so bright out here, but I found the tree that I'm going to use for this activity and I'll show you by flipping the camera. Alright, so this is a northern catalpa tree. I'm choosing it because it's a very large tree, it's got a lot of texture on its bark, and I'm interested in learning more about it and drawing it too. Alright, now I'll show you my journal page that I'm setting up for this activity. In this section, I'm going to do a bark rubbing with the crayon. That way I can record the texture of the tree like what Nate was talking about in Nature in Your Neighborhood. And then in this section, I'm going to draw a bud or a leaf. There aren't any leaves on the tree right now, so I'm going to aim to do a bud to examine it in more detail. And then I'm going to draw a large sketch of the tree here on this side. One tip though for drawing is that you want to aim to have the drawings about the size of your fist. That way when you start to draw, you're not starting too small where you can't go back and add in detail later. So that's just a really cool, helpful tip. And then you also want a second page because we're going to try to find a seed that belongs with the tree. So I'm going to look around, I'm going to try to find a seed that goes along with this tree and then describe it here, and then I'll also draw it too. I'm going to hold it up here and I'm going to press my crayon to it and then rub it in place here. Okay, so what this texture rub can tell me now doesn't look like much on the page, but this helps me to better realize and picture that this tree has a lot of grooves, because these heavier points are where the crayon was able to rub, but everything in between the crayon couldn't rub as easily because it was further into the tree. So it's just a different way to think about texture and how bark is structured. Okay, so next we're gonna draw a bud or a leaf. And like I said before, this tree doesn't have any leaves yet, so I'm gonna do my best to draw a bud. And the branches are super high up on the tree, so it's really hard for me to see them, but I'm gonna do my best to capture it on paper from what I can see of the buds. So what I noticed is that the twig that the buds are on is somewhat straight, a little bit scraggly looking, and then there are nodes on the tree. So they're kind of like a protrusion from the tree. It might have like a little cap here, but I noticed that the trees twigs are opposite, so the branches are going to come right outside from one another, and then right here there's a bud on each side. So I'm trying to encompass the twig and the buds in the picture. One thing that you can also do when you're drawing is add labels. So I might say node right there, node right here. I can label this as the twig, and I can say this is a bud. I can say that is a bud. And this just really helps to take the pressure off of your drawing if you're worried about it looking really awesome. Yeah, you don't have to. This is just about trying to make your drawings as accurate as they possibly can be, and labeling really helps to take that pressure off. So I'm going to keep drawing. Now that I'm done drawing the bud, I am going to draw the whole tree. And it's not going to be entirely perfect, and that's fine. The goal is to be just as accurate as possible because there's no way I can draw every single branch on this tree perfectly onto my picture. So I'm just going to aim to be accurate and record the overall shape and form as best as possible. As I was drawing, I realized that all of the branches on this tree are like cascading down. And typically when you think about a tree and needing sunlight for photosynthesis, you think of the branches going upwards, reaching towards the sunlight through a forest canopy. And so this tree is very atypical in that sense because the branches are curling downwards. And I find that very interesting. So that might be something that I make note of in my journal and then research later as something else to learn about this tree. As we move into seeds now, I took the time to find some seeds from this catalpa tree, and the really cool thing about catalpa trees is that the seeds come in these gigantic seed pods. So this one's cracked open. I don't have the other side of it, but inside are these little feathery-like structures that contain the seed. So this is what I'm going to be observing and drawing in this next portion of the activity. I'm going to look at the seed pod and the seed and see how many things I can say to describe these things. And then I will draw the seed and see how close I can to replicate it. Alright, so my glasses are back off. I can see. But yeah, now that I'm done drawing my seed, I noticed a lot more fiber in it than I had originally noticed before, which I find very interesting, and now I wonder what purpose it serves. My guess is that it has to do something with how the seed travels, because seeds travel in a couple different ways, by wind, by water, and by animal, and because the seeds of this tree are very feather-like, I think the seeds travel by wind. So that's my challenge for you for this next journal challenge, is to come up with a nature narrative for your seed and your tree. That's all for this activity. I really hope you enjoyed it. Now that you've spent so much more time with your tree, I hope you notice more things about it and have formed a connection with it, which is kind of fun. So that's all. I hope to see you next week, and please check out the website, duneslearningscenter.org/artisan-nature for the full activity page and other cool things, helpful tips and tricks, especially for drawing.